Welcome back to Uncontested. My name is Chelsea Peace, and I'm here with my family law attorney, Stacy Geiger.
Good morning, afternoon.
Whenever you're tuning in, we're here for you. Welcome back to Uncontested. Last week, we talked about finding your financial footing after your divorce. This week, we want to walk you through the process, A to Z. Many people step into an attorney's office not knowing what to expect whenever they're pursuing a divorce. So we want to go through step by step on what you can expect and talk about the emotional toll that you can expect to navigate through, as well as the legal things that you need to keep at the front of your mind. Welcome back. Awesome. So, Stacy, let's go from start to finish. Where does someone start with you?
Okay. So it doesn't, as you know, it can be an extensive process. It could be a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, a divorce can be an overnight process. Here in Florida, let's make that clear to everybody. This is not an every state thing, but in Florida here, you can be divorced in 24 hours, if everything is agreed upon.
That would be nice.
I know, right? So let's assume that's not what's happening.
If you're a unicorn, you could get a divorce
I love
overnight.
a unicorn. But in the situations where that's not the case, right? So the first step is you're going to contact an attorney and ideally have a consultation first. And we've discussed this before, where you find the right fit for you, the appropriate attorney who's going to understand your goals, your needs, and not necessarily give you the advice you want to hear, but you at least feel comfortable taking the advice. So then you've made that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Your first step is either you're filing for a divorce or you're being served. And here in Florida, honestly, whoever files first, there's no.
That was going to be a
race.
question I asked,
Yep.
right? Some states that does matter, from what I understand.
Here, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
The filing date matters as far as valuation times, but that's a totally different topic for another day. But as far as who gets to the courthouse first, that's not making a difference. So the initial step is filing a petition for dissolution, with kids, without kids, with property, without property. And then once that's filed, the other party will get served, and then they have 20 days to respond. So that's the big first step, right? Because the first thing you're doing is you're asking the court for all of the things that you want out of this divorce. It does not mean that you're going to get them.
Mm-hmm.
I want all of the alimony and half of the assets, and, I want my kids 100% of the time. And you're going to put everything in there that you want to see happen. It is a petition is your wish list, if you think of it that way.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that. I was kind of like, I don't need all of this. I remember in the beginning, I was very naive, thinking like, yeah, no, we don't have to fight for all of that. You're like, no, yeah, this is your wish list. This is your best case scenario. This is what you would want at the end of the day, with the rainbow or the pot of gold at the end, basically.
Right, because if you can't get something you don't ask for.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't ask for ultimate decision making on parental responsibility, then you're never going to get. I don't want to say never. It's unlikely, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then your next step is, if you are the petitioner and you do serve it, then the other party is going to answer, or in reverse, you're answering, and then they could potentially file a counter petition, and that is their wish list, right? So at this point, all things being equal, there's nothing completely stressful other than the basic stress of divorce, right? There's nothing that has to be done or panic to set in, because we're passing paper.
Right.
That's it. Nobody has to be anywhere doing anything. And I say all of these things with caveats, right? I mean, everybody has a specific circumstance. You can't jump and leave the state, which I know you want to joke at, but you're not supposed to. There are rules in place.
Right. And there's gonna be like one-off situations for everybody's divorces, right? Some people are going to have kids, some people aren't. Some people are going to have that parent that moved out of state and never came back for a year, and then all of a sudden said they wanted all the custody, right? Like, that doesn't happen to everybody.
Exactly.
But I do remember going through this, and I remember getting that counter petition, and it was one day late. I remember waiting that 20 days, and I was like, yes, he didn't answer, so we're going to, yeah. And then it came back, and one of your assistants, I can't remember her name, but it's like, yeah, no, it would cost you more to file contempt. We have to take it.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
There's always going to be leeway with time frames and dates, and if at the end of the day it doesn't cause damage, let's say, or it doesn't physically hurt anybody, then all of that's going to get waived. There are excuses for everything, right? We can be late on things.
Yeah.
But so we have paper passing.
Okay.
The next big step is what's called mandatory financial disclosure. And I think we've touched on this before because we've used it as to say, this is where you get to see everything. There is a colossal list of all the documents that need to be provided. And in a lot of situations in couples where the spouse oftentimes has no clue financially what's going on in the marriage. They say, I was allotted X amount of dollars. I know we're in 2026, but I hear the word an allowance every month still, like that.
For a grown adult.
For a grown adult, that still happens. He gave me X amount per month, a couple $1,000s, and I could do what I want with it. Or I had a credit card. I have no idea what's in the bank account. I don't know if we have a 401k, an IRA. I don't know if we have stocks or bonds. And he said something about a crypto account and Robinhood. I don't know. This is where you get to open the doors.
This makes me so scared for so many people.
It is shocking sometimes.
Because my vision is, I hear you saying, like, I didn't know all of this while I was in this relationship. So it almost leads me to believe that co-parenting dynamic afterwards, there's going to be a lot of expectations on somebody falling underneath someone else's rules. Like a lot of coercion, a lot of communication, manipulation, and things like that person's probably going to look forward to. It's going to be really difficult, even after.
Because the same person who's been hiding a Robinhood account for 15 years is the person you now have to deal with if you have children until they're 18.
Goodness
and probably for the rest of your life, right? Because as much as you think co-parenting ends at 18, at some point they're going to get married and have grandkids. And if they're involved, this is forever.
Mm-hmm. So
digesting. We're all just eating this.
Yeah, I'm like, let me bring my stress levels back down. We will make that our next episode where we talk about that right there. But okay, so we've each presented our wish lists. One has served, the other has countered. Now what?
And now we're in this mandatory financial.
That's right. Okay.
So we're going to each create a financial affidavit.
Mm-hmm.
And that is your income, your bank accounts, your credit card bills, deeds to every and any property you own. And it includes not that non-marital property is necessarily included in a division, but you still have to present it to the other side and say, this is mine and this is how I got it. So everything and anything that you can think of financially has to be disclosed. And this is where you're going to see somebody's credit card and say, we're spending $10,000 a month on a credit card. Oh my gosh, he's sending $7,000 a month to Amex. I had no idea. Like, okay, yes. And this is usually a giant awakening for a lot of couples when there's one fairly in the dark and not when it's not a cohesive relationship that unfortunately ended, but one that's been building for a long time where we had separate bank accounts or one party just had spending capabilities. It's a real eye-awakening event because what's on these credit cards? Why if we make $300,000 a year, is there only $100,000 in a 401k? He's been working this job for 10 years. Where did it go? And that's hard because what you think you're about to divide and walk away comfortably with doesn't exist.
That's an awakening.
It is.
Wow.
And it could be one credit card and one bank account and okay, great. Divide, separate, move on. Or it could be 70,000 pages of 2 years of 14 different credit cards and 5 different bank accounts. And if there are businesses, we're exchanging that information as well. And here in Florida, if you have an LLC or a S corp, these are all businesses that potentially are marital,
Mm-hmm.
and those accounts come into existence as well. And they're things that you want to look at and consider, because if you're running a business, and for a lot of people, right, they have a small business and they use that business to go to Publix or Winn-Dixie or Aldi's. And let's just say most people maybe use those accounts to also purchase food for their family. Well, all of a sudden, that's not just a business expense, but that is income.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not treating it as income. So now the attorney, the attorneys on each side will go through every detail of these finances to figure out what's the exact amount of income.
Mm-hmm.
What is that person making, that if it's a business deductions, you can have a multi-million-dollar business and show $100,000 income a year.
Depends
right?
on how good you are at your taxes or
Sure.
bookkeeping and all of that. That makes sense. And I can feel the emotional toll. Like this is kind of our thing, right? We talk about the legal side of it,
Yep.
and then how your emotions can make this either easy to deal with or difficult to deal with. And I can see where that can be a whole nother experience for you, as far as grief and frustration and anger of, what do you mean the life that I thought we were building was, we don't have the money that I thought we had,
Yeah.
right?
This is usually a huge mountain
Yes.
and a very hard fall if it goes the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
When we discover that accounts are bare compared to what we thought was in it.
And that goes back to that identity of, I thought we were successful. I thought that us getting a divorce, both of us would be able to start clean, but we are in a worse off financial position than where I thought we were. So now maybe that all that courage you just built up to go step out on your own because you thought, okay, yeah, he'll help me with alimony, he'll help me with child support. And now you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm leaving with debt. I'm not leaving with anything.
Right. Because and I keep reminding everybody who's listening, I can only speak as to Florida, but we discuss equitable distribution, and that is the idea of it basically balancing out. If there is a couple and there's a marital debt of $20,000, 10 is going to you, 10 is going to him.
Mm-hmm.
It balances out somewhere down the line. But if we're looking for equity, everyone's getting half, and that's where a lot of questions will come in and say, but especially when I just said there's one side who didn't have access. Well, wait, I didn't spend all this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go out and use our credit card to buy vehicles or, comic book collectibles or things that, you might not care about. Or in reverse, a lot of men will say, well, she has 100, fancy, expensive luxury handbags and a shoe collection. She was racking this up. It wasn't me. Well, that's adorable, but we're going to go.
Yeah.
And you were married. So this is a joint problem now that we have to look at. Now, this is not to say that, I don't want to say that we only focus on the negative, but obviously there are good case scenarios where, like,
Of course.
there's so much money, I'm okay.
But I think what we want to paint you the picture of, like, how bad it could be.
Yeah, let's
talk worst case scenario, because yours is probably not worst case scenario.
no.
Mine
It's
was.
good to know.
I'm just kidding.
It wasn't worse. No. But that's right. But there's, you need to be aware that these things can happen. I think a lot of women don't realize, especially if they're this far in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
what could be on the other side of the door.
Right.
I almost picture that that old game, Let's Make a Deal, or maybe they still have it, but there could be a giant piano behind door number 1.
Ah.
Or there could be a new car and a new house, or there could be what they call it, a zoink, a bonk, whatever that was. Oh no, I selected door 3 and this is not good.
Uh-huh.
But no matter what door, no matter what, that's the door.
That's the door you got, and it's happening.
And we have to work through it. So that is this mandatory financial disclosure is huge.
Okay.
And that could last. In a good situation, it's done within 45 days of service and we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
In a bad, that's where it could drag out, because when you are looking at things, and we discussed this early on, if there's cases of infidelity, and you think that there is, now we're looking through these specifically for hotels I didn't stay at, restaurants I didn't attend, large withdrawals of cash, and it's not going somewhere else. Where's the money going? So it's a very important step.
Okay. And let me ask you this, because we talked about before, Florida's a no-fault state. So, right? So whenever we're divorcing and we're looking at that, that's specifically for like equitable distribution or alimony that we would care that they're using.
So it's for dissipation.
Okay.
If your spouse has been seeing somebody else on the side, and prior to filing, they're taking an Amex card and they're staying at the Four Seasons, in Orlando with another woman, well, that's your money. Because you don't want the judge to say, well, we divide this credit card.
I got you.
And wait a minute, $10,000 of it went to flowers that did not go to me, and a hotel and a day spa experience. They went to, the Caribbean islands. I thought he was on a work trip, but it was not.
So for our viewers, it's a red flag if your attorney isn't helping you to break that down, and they're trying to speed up the equitable distribution, right? Like if it's we'll just call a good half and half, a good attorney would fight for you and make sure that you're not getting debt that you don't have to pay for.
If there are red flags like that,
yeah,
there's a question. If you're coming to your attorney and you're like, look, we're just moving on. There's no issues. We've just grown apart. Yes, this is my debt. This is his debt, her debt. We accumulated. I expect that we divide it. You should look at it, but if all sides are even, I don't know that you're spending dozens of hours going line by line.
Got it.
But in situations where there might be infidelity or other reasons for dissipation, if there is any type of drug or alcohol abuse or things of that nature, gambling problems, that's when you're going to go through and say, what?
Okay.
This is not me, and this was not a joint decision we made. And
for those that are watching who they're not in the light with their financial situation, hearing you say things like this can help them go, and when they finally do get a chance. Because I know for me, when we got those documents, I started looking at things and I was like, hey, make sure you look, why is he cash apping this person every week and he's not sending us money? Like, we probably know a little bit more about where these places are, who these people are that they're sending money to, so you can help your attorney look for the right things if it is highly contested.
Absolutely. And if you're in a marriage, like a longer term marriage, and you think, this has been coming on for years, and we both knew it, but neither of us did anything about it. I'm sure we had a few $100,000 in a savings account. Where did it go?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can recapture it if you think that something was done improperly. We just have to find it and go through it, and that's when you go line by line and look at things more carefully. Things that you can't do, if you see a filing coming down the road, you cannot just close out a bank account.
No. Yeah, and they want what do we do, like 24 months, 48 months?
And
it was something. It was a lot.
Be more, depending on what we're looking at.
So then we go from financial disclosure and dissipation, and then I think it's mediation, right?
Correct. So in Florida, every divorce, every paternity action is going to go to mediation, whether that's a court-appointed or appointed mediator or a private mediator.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who do not know, a mediator is just a third-party neutral. Their entire job is the ideal is to resolve your case. That their entire job and their success rests upon their ability to be successful. So the better mediators will get more referrals just because they have a higher success rate. So I think a lot of attorneys will lean to a few of them, and it's not because they have, they'll side with me. A lot of people think, that attorney only wants that mediator because they're friends and they'll side with them. Well, no, they're just good at their job.
Right. And I remember my mediation experience. It was 6 hours, and I had never done it before, but you and the mediator had both done it before. And I think you both did a really good job of keeping the kids at the forefront, which I really appreciated. And I think a lot of our viewers would appreciate is, like, especially when there's kids involved, that person is literally bouncing between the rooms going, how does this serve your children? how does fighting over this $50 a month serve your kids? Like, which one of us is going to bend in which direction to try to solve this today so that you guys can move on? And I remember it was a really great experience. When you have a good mediator, you have a good legal team on your side, you're good.
And that mediator does try. I mean, the mediator wants everybody to walk out done. And mediation, for the most part, nobody's walking out a winner or a loser, because it is self-directed. You decide at the end of the day. And in your case, we did not settle.
No.
There was no question. We could not reach any type of ground where you were willing to give and he was willing to give. There was no medium ground. In a lot of cases there are, and it's a great day, just because self-direction means you're not relying on a judge.
Yes, because there's a lot of uncertainty when you go to a judge. So I really wanted to wrap things up in mediation. I would have loved to be able to put the stamp of approval and say we're both happy with the decisions that we made, regardless of what we had to sacrifice. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So what happens after mediation?
Right. So if and just to know, so that everyone does understand, mediation is a completely confidential process. But again, there's always some reasons where it wouldn't be. But for the most part, your mediator's not coming to court. They're not testifying that this was offered, it was rejected, we already tried to do this, and no one wanted to agree. But that ends. There could be depositions. That is where the other party decides to. A deposition is almost like an interview, for lack of a better term, right? You're going to come in, or another party is going to come in, and the other side, the other attorney, is going to ask a ton of questions, trying to figure out things that they can use in court. I hate to say against you, but obviously that's what it is, right? So a lot of times it'll be the initial parties, and that is really just to catch you, wrap you in
whatever you said during this deposition. And then that way, if you go into court and we ask you the same question again, well, why is it different now? Because we have you on record.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. So, if one party's saying he did this all the time, or she did this all the time, and parental alienation, and she didn't timeshare, and then you are deposed and you say, I did this on this day, this day, this day, and this is where that calendar comes in that we've talked about so many times.
That's what I was just thinking about. Is like, if in my mind, okay, now if you have gone to mediation and it did not work out, it's time to start documenting, was kind of where my brain went. Was, if you're now in a fight, you're in a battle.
Yeah, unquestionably, there's,
And that took me a minute to wrap around. We tried to be equal part players in this game. Now we're going to go to trial, and we're going to prove our side of things, and we're going to allow the judge to make a decision. And it's out of our hands at this point, unless there was some back and forth with you and the attorney leading up to trial too.
There is, and that's important thing to know. It doesn't, just because you don't settle on day 1 or day 30 or at mediation, it doesn't mean that you can't. There are always the ability to settle. I can't tell you how many days of trial we have settled. The morning of, and the judge has come in and said, are we moving forward? Is there anything I need to know? Do you need to step outside and work things out? Absolutely. Because again, no matter what happens in court, it's not your decision. It's the judge's. Anything that you can decide outside of that courtroom is your personal decision. That's you putting a stamp on it and saying, I can live like this. The second you put the future into the judge's hand, that's his decision or her decision.
You're kind of gambling.
It is. It always is. And we can say, and I say it all the time, as much as I want to tell you what I think can happen, I can't guarantee what's going to happen. So it
There was also another part of this that I didn't have to deal with, but I'm sure some of your clients have to deal with. A guardian ad litem, these sort of things. Like, when do those come into play, if ever?
And again, this about me, but my most important thing is kids. If there's kids in a marriage, then they're going to come first. We're going to try to work out a parenting plan. We're going to try to work out any type of time sharing, minor agreements. Like we were just saying, you can agree to anything. in small increments even.
I loved that about you too. Like you're like, I can't get him to agree to everything, but I'm gonna ask about this one thing, and then she comes to trial and she's like, oh, and we agreed on these 37 things before we got here. By the way, you maybe didn't realize it, but I have it in writing. You agreed.
We have so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can keep stacking it, that minimizes what's happening over here, right?
Micro wins is what we like.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And why not? And especially if it's about kids, let's get those things in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a guardian comes in if you genuinely believe that there is something happening and your children need to be protected.
Yeah.
That maybe the court is not seeing the full picture.
So protected, like DV, drugs, that sort of thing, protected?
Yes and no. I mean, for the most part, if there's a history of drug abuse or domestic violence, you can get into a court and immediately suspend time sharing or get some sort of supervised time sharing in place. But things sometimes that you can't necessarily see or put on paper if they're claiming parental alienation, or these things are happening behind the scene and we can't get it in front of a court. But I think my children need someone to see this.
Mm-hmm.
So a guardian ad litem is the person who will come and talk to the parents and talk to the kids and see the big picture.
So they're like a neutral party as well, but they're more on the kids' side.
Yeah,
they're on the kids' side,
right? I mean, there are also attorneys ad litem for children, and those are the children's advocate. Those you don't see as often.
Okay.
Right? Because 99% of cases don't need to get that far.
Okay.
And that's just here, right? I mean, I do have to say.
You're based off your experience, right? Which
So
makes sense.
We're luckily in a place where we don't have to see all that. But again, and this comes back to selecting your attorney or your attorney selecting you. A lot of times attorneys don't take certain cases where, they don't want it in their nightmares. I hate to say it any other way, but
okay.
A lot of attorneys can pick and choose, those are choices that they make,
Right. And I think for me, and for anybody listening, neutral factual documentation will withstand, maybe if you don't have the funds for that, or if it's not that extreme and you really just need to point out, hey, listen, the alienation claims that they have, I have screenshots of me offering time and them turning it down, putting that in a notebook. Hey, I offered to drive them to him and he turned it down. Put that in a notebook. The things that we want a guardian ad litem to see, maybe you just start doing all the right things for them, get them in therapy, get them a good support system, and document.
I think what you're saying is really important to note, because what we should address as well is, a hotly contested divorce is not cheap, right? I mean, it's not an overnight divorce that is at its minimal expense. And when you start adding in additional parties that you need for testimony, they can be extremely expensive. And again, Florida, you're looking at $5,000 for a guardian ad litem, and possibly much higher depending on if you're going to require testimony and multiple reports and how long this is going to go on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we didn't discuss is in revert, if you are getting divorced and the other party has not been working for 4 or 5 years, and this is probably somewhere in between your mandatory financial disclosure and maybe mediation or post-mediation prior to trial, things that come up, well, she never worked, or he doesn't work. I'm the one who's the breadwinner, but he has a bachelor's of science degree. He can do this and this and this, and he used to be a stockbroker or sell cars. At one point he was making $150,000 a year. Excuse me, sorry, I'm deceased. And he doesn't he chose not to because I was doing so well. Well, that's called a vocational expert. You hire somebody to come in to say, here's everything that he can do, and this is the amount of money he can make, and then you ask the court to compute him at that income. So that's another expense. You're talking another $5,000. When there are businesses, if you can't agree on what the value of a business is or how much money is coming in from a business valuation expert can start at $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. It can become a $30,000, $40,000 adventure.
Right.
So
where I think it'd be a good place for us to wrap this up and land for today's episode is, if you can clear it up together in the beginning and say, hey, look, this chapter of our life is over, and make it a very cost-effective separation. We can come to an agreement. Great. If we go to mediation, we can wrap it up. We can sacrifice some things. We can come to an agreement. Great. If not, when you go to trial, there are options available to fight the good fight. You've got support like guardian ad litem, vocational experts, any sort of expert witness, those depositions that you can use. There's tons of things that your attorney will pull in to advocate for you, depending on how hard you want to fight. But I think the whole premise of our podcast is, remembering that what you're fighting for is over. What is it costing you to stay in this divorce? Is fighting for a business that we just recently discovered that's not very profitable after all worth it to you, right? And could you rebuild it? That's one of the things that I had to be comfortable with. And anybody in this type of separation, you got to ask yourself, if I built it once and I lost it, could I do it again? And absolutely you can.
Sure.
And you've got every opportunity to do that. But hopefully this clarified the process for them from start to finish. And of course, we didn't really touch on what trial day looked like, but honestly, if you've had the great prep from your attorney going into trial, it's honestly like, hey, listen, you've been gathering facts for a long time. We practice these questions. Go ahead and anticipate that the other side is going to try to make you the villain. Just know that. Do everything but cuss that man out when you get on the stage or on the stand.
That's not a good idea.
Don't be like me. Don't be like me.
You were fine. But I think what we want to say is that don't be afraid of the process.
Yeah.
Don't let that be your hurdle that you can't get over, because it's not the end of the world.
It's
something that you can take hold of. You're not the attorney, so you don't have to panic about deadlines and what's needed. Just follow the list of what you should be doing.
Yeah. And go back to that, what we talked about before, the emotional control and the legal control. And if it's something legal, ask your attorney. If it's something emotional, go ask yourself. Go stand in the mirror and ask yourself, why am I making such a big deal out of this?
Exactly.
And then that's where you get to step back and take that power back in that situation. You will be so much stronger. You will be a much stronger version of yourself if you go through a high contested divorce. Why can't I talk right now? High conflict divorce. You will be such a stronger individual getting through it, and looking back at it. You'll learn a lot, and you'll be able to give your friends tips and tricks too. But make sure you hire a great attorney, and don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid, because at some point you're going to find your own peace.
And change your last name. I'm just kidding. Don't do it. Don't be like me. We'll see you next time on Uncontested. Thank you so much.